Yeah, very good evening, friends. And today we will be discussing about the Weberian approach in trying to understand the political sociology. In the last class, we elaborately discussed about the approach of Karl Marx in trying to understand the nature of political society, the nature of the state, and also the nature of the the class struggle that is being analyzed by the Karl Marx. So in this class, and we will be primarily focusing on the Weberian approach. And who is a Max Weber, right? So let us understand the Max Weber and who is this person. So the Max Weber is one of the founding fathers of the political sociology discourse, and he played a phenomenal role in development of various approach in the sociology discipline. So he lived during 1864 to 1920. He is a German social theorist and a sociologist, and who is also considered as I said that is one of the founders of political sociology, right? So he produced a variety of phenomenal works and seminal works in sociological discourse, and that have laid a huge role in the development of discipline itself, right? So when it comes to the political sociology discourse, Max Weber has provided a different approach in trying to understand the political nature of the state, and also and how the state interacts with the society and the social individuals, and how social individuals play a key role in trying to influence the political behavior of the state. So in a way that he produces and he gives a lot of examples and ideas, concepts in trying to understand the concept of political sociology through his approach. So let us study categorically. So one by one, that to be precise, in the first part of his understanding that he provided approach to study the political sociology. The first concept is called the ideal types. So what is an ideal type? And ideal type is a measuring rod to understand the social social system or social structure, or any given social phenomenon. In other words, to Max Weber, the term ideal type has a distinctive meaning, and there are certain underlying principles pertaining to its construction, right? So to him, ideal type is a mental construct, right? So like a model. So why it is model, and and he developed his own measuring rod as a mental construct in order to understand some social phenomenon. Like um, in other words, to him, ideal type is a mental construct, like a model, right? For the scrutiny and the systematic characterization of a concrete situation, right? So indeed, he used ideal type as a methodological tool to understand and analyze social reality. So in other words, so what is an ideal type? So let us discuss, this concept. The ideal type is, according to Max Weber, one cannot study social reality, one cannot study the social phenomenon without having an idea of what ideal type constitutes, right? So without having the idea of what constitutes the ideal type. So ideal type is a mental construct to understand the social, to analyze and study the social reality. uh, to put it in a simple terms, so what is an ideal type? For example, uh, uh, when we talk about a good student, for example, in the class, right? So we talk about a good student when, by developing a mental construct of what constitutes that good student, the what constitutes the qualities of those good students. And so we always analyze the goodness in relation to that mental construct. In other words, to become a good citizen, what constitutes the values of good citizen? So those values are the mental construct. And we always trying to understand the society and its social institutions, by developing this mental construct, by developing this ideal type. So Max Weber, in a way that he used developed this sort of understanding of an ideal type, that what constitute a good society, for example. So he developed in his own understanding of a mental construct. There, then after constructing the goodness and ideal type of those mental constructs, he tried to analyze the society, and he always analyzed the society by in relation to the mental construct of a ideal type. You can take the example of anything. For example, so what constitutes a good family, for example? So the good family constitutes the good values and norms, and and who socializes its own child for the betterment of to become a good citizen of a society. So that those qualities are called the good family, right? So if families are not performing such duties, so what we do, so we take this mental construct of a good family in trying to understand the what is happening in the ground reality in the society. So according to Max Weber, so he why he developed this methodological tool to understand the social society, and to understand the social institutions, to understand the social phenomenon, just merely because, and he thought that, so you cannot go and study the society just like that, right? So he thought that you need to have an understanding of a theoretical construct, that what constitutes this ideal type. So without having an understanding of ideal type, you cannot go into the field and study the social objects directly, right? So even if you study the social objects directly, and you lead to misconceptions, or the illusionary understanding of those realities. And in other words, unless you have a theoretical understanding of a social structure, and you cannot comprehend the social reality practically. So this is where the Max Weber, so he developed the concept of ideal type to understand and analyze social reality. So it is a mental construct, like a model for the to scrutinize and understand and analyze the social reality, right? So this is according to Max Weber. And he also discussed in political discourse, sociology discourse, he also discussed the concept of social action. So what is social action according to Max Weber? So according to Max Weber, sociology is science which attempts with interpretative understanding of social action in order to arrive at a causal explanation of its cause and effects, right? So he talks about different four types of social action. So those are all, like the reference to goals and values, and to merely speaking, that he discusses about the traditional action, he discusses about effective action, and so on. So and he talks about the rationalization. So right, so what is a rationalization according to Max Weber? The rationalization is an ideal type, or as a historical force, appears in much of Max Weber's writings. So he regards the development of rational forms to be one of the most important characteristics of development of Western society and capitalism. And Max Weber viewed traditional and charismatic forms as irrational and least non-rational, and we'll be discussing those aspects a little later. Uh, and when it comes to the he used even the religion as a backdrop in order to understand the political nature of the state. Since he's also lived, like Karl Marx, and he also lived during the ages of the early forms of capitalism in the Western Europe. So he also tried to understand how capitalism works, and he tried to understand what is the nature of the state in trying to produce its own will over its citizens. So he used religion and as an ideal type, so to speak, as an ideal type, in order to understand the nature of capitalism. So to be precise, that he said that how religion becomes political, right? How religion plays an important role, becoming a political object in trying to create and have has its effect on the economic institutions. And in other words, and he tried to understand that how religion helped for the growth of capitalism, right? So particularly Max Weber, he was interested primarily in the systems of ideas of the world's religions. Of course, he discussed a variety of religions across the world, and of course, primarily he focused on the Christianity and the Protestant ethic, to be precise, and in the spirit of capitalism and in rationalization as a modern system of norms and values. So Max Weber tried to understand how religion helps and how religion becomes political in order to have its effect, towards the growth of capitalism in the modern era. So, according to Max Weber, this modern capitalism emerged by the religious ethics of Protestant ethics, and particularly Calvinism. Let us understand this. I'll just try to brief you with this work, and because Max Weber's work, the Protestant ethic and the spirit of capitalism, is one of the most seminal works that have ever produced by any sociologist in the literature of in sociological discipline. Uh, the Protestant ethic and the spirit of capitalism is a book written by Max Weber. As I said that he's a German sociologist, an economist, and of course he's a politician in a different sense. This original text was in German language, and which was again those works came in 1904 or 1905, sometime during that period. This English version, what we are studying today, is actually translated by Talcott Parsons in 1930, right? So the spirit of the Protestant ethic and spirit of capitalism is a work which was actually written by Max Weber in German language, which is being translated into English by Talcott Parsons in 1930, right? So, what that text speaks. So let us study that what text speaks. As you may know that the Protestant ethic and the spirit of capitalism as the title itself says that there was a lot of debate that happened with the entry of church into the politics, and with the entry of church into the privacy of someone's life in the European society, particularly in 16th and 17th centuries. So what happened? So most of these middle class men and middle class, the people and who are well educated at that time, so they questioned the authority of the church. They questioned the clergy class of the church. They questioned the Roman Catholic of the church, and because the church was so dominant that where it didn't allow the space for a freedom and liberty for the citizens to act and perform their duties. So even this, when the modern science came, and they started its own journey from the Industrial Revolution to the next phases of its life. This educated man, these are called intellectual class, right? So this intellectual class came to the streets and argued that argued against the norms and values of the Roman Church, because that the church was became so dominant that where it didn't allow its citizens and its followers to perform their duties, this is where the movements such as Calvinism that emerged in European society. That Calvinism is a group of it's a tenet, it is a principle, it's a sect that questioned the authority of Roman Catholics. It questioned the authority of Roman Catholics, and this is where this group, when they questioned against the monopoly and authoritative nature of the Roman Catholics, this group became known as the Protestants, because they are Protestants against the monopoly of the Roman Catholics, right? And this Protestants became so important in the European history, and of course in the histories of capitalism, that this group played a key role, saying that the church cannot interfere in economy, the church cannot interfere in the state politics, the church cannot interfere in the privacy of an individual. So they questioned all sort of dominance that was there during the time of 16th century, 17th century, and in fact those movements led to the development of French Revolution, that led to the development of democratic societies, that led to the emergence of democratic forms of government in European and American societies. So these Protestants became so important in that literature, is that according to Max Weber, that these people have not only questioned the authority and monopoly of the church, but also this class, these Protestants became a key role in taking the society forward and in transforming the society from the feudal mode of production to the capitalist mode of production. Because this class played a huge role in transforming and bringing social change in the society, right? So therefore, according to Max Weber, he says that the religion, when in other words, the Roman Catholics tenet says that work is, they distinguish between the work and the worship, right? So because it always talked about the worship only, and but when it comes to the Protestant ethic, how the spirit of capitalism that that shook and that taken place, that took off from that early stages of capitalism was, this Protestant ethic says that the work is worship. It is not, one cannot differentiate between the work and the worship, because in the Roman Catholic principle, the work and worship was distinguished. But whereas when it comes to the Protestant ethic, it says that the work itself is worship. But because as long as you work and you produce and you work, for the betterment of society, that itself is a worship to the God, right? That itself is a worship to the God. As long as you go to the schools and study the modern science and develop and participate in the production process, that is work. That itself shows you're worshiping the God according to the Protestant ethics, and the Calvinism. So in this way, that this religion became a dominant force, and in a way that this when the industrial revolution took off in 18th century, this religion, there was a Protestant group within the religion that questioned the authority of the church, and this group became a dominant role in transforming the society, right? So in a way that this group is not against the God and against the Bible and against the preachings of theology, but they questioned the authority of the clergy class. They questioned the authority of the priestly class, and because they said that you cannot dictate us what to do, and you cannot be, because we also believe in God. We know how to worship, and we worship our God, through work, through production labor, through production process. So like that, that understanding transformed the capitalist society altogether. And it not only transformed the European society, the nature of capitalism also transformed across various religions, across different, across the world. So this Max Weber, he says that this religion became so important because he says that this religion, the Protestants within the religion have played an important role in determining the political behavior of the state, and in forming the state, in determining the state, and in influencing the state. So in a way that this group played a huge role in influencing the political behavior of the state, right? So according to Max Weber, the work is therefore an end in itself, the profit to be reinvested in virtuous and bring its own reward, right? So this Weber established a correlation between the religious way of thinking in the world and an attitude, that turned towards economic activity, right? So this is where the Max Weber is tried to understand the nature of capitalism through religion. So he used the religion as an ideal tool, ideal type, in order to understand the nature of capitalism. Okay, so this is where the Max Weber talks about the nature of capitalism through the understanding of religion. And in the next concept, and particularly on the power, and he discusses that, according to Max Weber, the power is an aspect of social relation, and it refers to the possibility of imposing on will upon the behavior of another person, right? So what is the power? So the power is an imposition of will. That imposition of will is the power, right? So therefore power is present in all social interactions and creates situations of inequality, since the one who has the power imposes on it on the others. So according to Max Weber, he says that he identifies the power not merely in the political state or with the government and with the state, but also he says that the power is everywhere. And you take the example of a family. So the father plays, uses the power, right, on the children, on the family, right? And why he does, and to maintain social solidarity, to maintain integrity of the family, isn't it? So this power, in a way, and according to Max Weber, so as long as the power exists, there are chances for unequal relations to exist in society, right? So he says that Weber says that power can be exercised in all walks of life, right? So power is there everywhere, right? In the schools, in the colleges, when you go out and when you go to the church and temple, and everywhere the power is there, and you're bound to surrender to those the structures of power, right? So the power is not merely vested in the interest and in the hands of the state and the government. The power is vested everywhere. So this is according to Max Weber. So it is not. Thus, he says that the power is not restricted to one battlefield. Or the political state of the state. But he says that it is to be observed in everywhere, in the marketplace, in the lecture platform, in the family, in the civil society, etc. So thus, according to Karl Marx, this power is there everywhere, right? So the power produces unequal relations, because those who owns the power, they impose their will on the powerless. So this creates a imbalanced relation that creates an imbalanced and unequal social relation between these two streams of platforms. Okay, so this is power according to Max Weber. Then he also talks about the authority. He also talks about the authority. So according to Weber, there are three types of authority, right? And he according to him, there is a traditional authority, there is a rational legal authority, and you have a charismatic authority, right? So what is traditional authority? Traditional authority is based on the belief in the sanctity of age-old customs and rules. Suppose you take the example of our own families, right? And we give respect to our elders, we give respect to the father, right? We give respect to the family members, and those are all those powers are the traditional authorities, which are derived from the customs, traditions, and cultural norms, and so on. Those norms are passed from one generation to another, right? And it is through the passing of those norms from one generation to another, this traditional authority sustains itself to impose its will on the on its people, on its family members, for example, and so on. And you can also take the example of in the villages particularly, and you have caste panchayats. So this caste panchayat is a traditional authority, right? Because it is derived from the age-old customs and rules, right? So this is a one type of a traditional authority according to Max Weber. Then he also talks about rational legal authority, right? So what we see today, and this is a modern era, and where this authority, and we can see that this is a rational legal authority which is maintained by laws, decrees, the regulation, right? So this the state imposes its will, its power on the people with by using rational legal authority, or in other words, with the help of laws, decrees, and regulations, right? So this is a rational legal authority. It's a second type of authority according to Max Weber. Then he also talks about the third type of authority, that is charismatic authority. So what is that authority? This charismatic authority is characterized by exceptional virtue possessed by or attributed to the leader by those who follow him, right? Have confidence in him and are devoted to him. And particularly we can see in Indian politics, for example, right? In Indian politics, we have a very charismatic. Suppose if and you may know that in Telugu politics, for example, and we have a charismatic leader like NTR, right? So when NTR started his party, Telugu Desam party, so that charismatic, the authority arises from charismatic, right? Because since he's a stardom, a film character, a demigod, right? So people surrender to this authority. People respect this authority, recognize this authority, and surrender to that authority. So that's called charismatic authority, and you will find a lot of examples like this in Indian society, particularly in the politics. And you have another charismatic authority like Chiranjeevi. So when he established the party, Prajarajam Party, majority of the people turned towards him and saw him as part of the charismatic authority, right? So this charismatic authority, according to Max Weber, is characterized by exceptional virtue possessed by or attributed to the leader by those who follow him and have confidence in him, and they devote him as demigods, right? So these are the three types of authority that plays an important role in the modern societies, so to speak, according to Max Weber. I repeat, the first type of authority is the traditional authority, and the next one is the rational legal authority, and third one is the charismatic authority. And these authorities are very important because these authorities play a dominant role in trying to impose their will on the people, in trying to impose their ideas, orders, regulations on the people, right? So, and after discussing this, particularly Max Weber, he also talks about the political leadership, right? So, what he talks in this concept. So, in political sociology, one of most, Weber's most influential contribution is politics, political leadership and the political concept. Particularly, he writes in his work called Politics as a Vacation, right? He writes he wrote a work, a famous work called Politics as a Vacation. In this essay, particularly, Weber unveils the definition of the state as that entity that possesses a monopoly of the legitimate use of physical force. And Weber wrote that politics is the sharing of state's power between various groups, and political leaders are those who wield this power. In other words, when it comes to the modern political state, Weber says that the state uses its force on the people through legitimate means, because that authority is legalized, legitimized, and institutionalized. Because this is where the state gets the authority to rule over its citizens over its subjects for the integrity, for maintaining integrity of the society, for maintaining solidarity in the society, for maintaining harmony in the society. All right. So Weber says that why state and how state uses its power and its violence over the people is through the legitimation of those forces, is through the institutionalization of those forces, is through the legalization of those forces, isn't it? So this is where the Max Weber says that the modern state, particularly after the entry of industrial revolution, the age of Renaissance, and so on, this when the when there was an emergence of a nation state, there was also an emergence of democratic setup. And when the democratic state emerged, the state used its force over the citizens through legitimate means, because those force was legalized, legitimized, and institutionalized, for the maintaining of social integrity and social solidarity and social harmony in the society. Okay. So along with this, there are different approaches, that have come, in the discourse of political sociology, and particularly we have a modern approaches, particularly those modern approaches is in fact that based and emphasis that lays an emphasis on the factual study of political phenomenon and arrive at scientific and definitive conclusions. Okay, so this is a modern approach. So, friends, we studied the Weberian approach. Now we'll be studying the modern approach, and in this modern approaches, we will be studying the behavioral approach, non-behavioral approach, and so on. So, in this modern approach, instead of speculating the social phenomenon, these approaches are on the factual study of a political phenomenon to arrive at a scientific and definitive conclusions. Okay, okay. So this is where the lot of literature that have come up over a period of time in the field of political sociology. In other words, the modern approaches, it emphasized on and shifted its focus from the study what ought to what is. So this is where a definitive conclusion, this sociologist, particularly behavioral approach sociologists and non-behavioral approach sociologists, they want to create a platform to study definitive aspects of political behavior and political phenomenon to arrive at a scientific and definitive conclusions, isn't it? So, in the behavioral approach, particularly this behavioral approach in political sociology came into being after the emergence of the behavioral sciences, and this approach examines the actions of individuals rather than the characteristics of institutions in social settings. So, in a way that this behavioral approach is a micro approach. So instead of studying the institutions, unlike Karl Marx, unlike Max Weber, and who attempted to study the social institutions at a larger level, this behavioral approach, they try to understand not at the level of the institutions, but at the level of the social individuals. So it shifted its focus from major to micro, right? So, macro to micro. In other words, it shifted its focus from macro to micro, right? Therefore, this approach examines the social action of individuals rather than the characteristics of individuals in social settings. There are various authors and the writers who actually advocated for the development of behavioral approach in trying to understand the political behavior of the state and also the social individuals at a micro level. And particularly scholars like Graham Wells and Arthur Bentley and Walter Lippmann and Charles Merriam, and so on. So these people, they advocated this approach that's called behavioral approach in trying to understand on the political behavior at the individual level. At the individual level. Therefore, this study, the behavioral approach, it calls for the study of acts, attitudes, preferences, and expectations of man in the political context. Right? So it lays emphasis on the collection and the examination of facts relating to actual behavior of man as a social and political being. So, therefore, this behavioral approach, it shifts its focus from the study of politics, from formalism and normative orientations of the legalistic and philosophical schools to the study of social actions with among the individuals, among the individuals. And therefore, this behavioral approach shifted its emphasis from the ideal state government political institutions to the study of day-to-day, political problems of the citizens. And this is where there's a lot of studies that have come in the field of political sociology. Now you may find that particularly when you switch on media channels on the television sets, and this media particularly, it focuses on, it goes to the people and it asks that what are the issues that are there at the ground level, and be it in the slums, and be it in the rural settings, and be it in the educational institution, be it in the healthcare sector, be it in the employment, and so on. So all these are the issues that are grounded at the individual level. Of course, those issues are the derivative of the social problems. But however, this behavioral approach, instead of studying those issues at the institutional level, this approach primarily, it focused on the social problems at the individual level, right? So at the individual levels, so it primarily focused to study the day-to-day political problems of the citizens. Thus, this behavioral approach, trying to understand the political behavior of the social individuals in the day-to-day life, right? So therefore, this behavioralism is concerned with individuals' political behavior as a member of group and institutions, And in fact, this behavioralism, why it talks at the level of individual, and why it talks at the micro level of the institutions and individuals, just primarily because it always aims to derive at a scientific outlook and objectivity in drawing the conclusions of the social phenomenon, right? Because they're primarily interested, instead of making a mere judgment of the existing social problem at the institutional level, this behavioral approach always wanted to study and arrive at a definitive conclusion with a scientific approach, with a scientific objectivity, in drawing the conclusions of the social problem, right? This is where behavioralism approach tries to do. And again, and how the behavioralism focuses, what are its methodologies, what are its methods in trying to understand the social reality, in trying to understand the social problem. And whereas particularly when it comes to the traditional political sociologists that we have seen, the Karl Marx and Max Weber, they employed philosophical, historical, or comparative methods for their study, right? Whereas the behavioral political sociologists, they emphasize the techniques such as research methodologies such as observation and interviews, survey research, case studies, data collection, statistical analysis, and so on. So these are very definitive kind of collecting the data and trying to understand with a scientific approach and objectivity approach, right? And it also this study is also draws an emphasis from interdisciplinary approach, and in fact it adopts interdisciplinary approach, and it says that one cannot study politics without studying the sociology. One cannot study political science without studying. One cannot study politics without understanding the sociology, without understanding economics, without understanding the history, for example. So this approach, behavioral approach, they try to arrive at a common point, say drawing the benefits from each discipline. Therefore, this approach always adopts and promotes and advocates interdisciplinary approach in trying to understand the social problem. In trying to understand the social problem. So therefore, this behavioral approach, it draws its the help from history, anthropology, and economics, political science, and so on. So therefore, this approach basically advocates interdisciplinary studies, interdisciplinary studies, and as I said that what is the name of behavioral political sociologists? They want to, they always aim to build a scientific theory with the help of observation and experimentation, right? And which may be able to predict things and be applied universally. So that's an ultimate aim for them. I repeat, the ultimate aim is to build a scientific theory with the help of observation and experimentation. Because why those are needed according to them in order to predict things and and apply those findings universally. So this is where the behavioral approach stands one of the most prominent in the literature of political sociology in the contemporary societies, right? So we have another approach called post-behavioral approach, right? So what is the post-behavioral approach? So post-behavioral approach was nothing but the behavioralism was a movement against traditionalism, right? So as we see that, so why behavioralism came? Because it's a movement against traditionalism. He thought that Karl Marx failed to understand few things, and he said that Max Weber failed to understand few things. So these people, the behavioralists, they came and advocate the studying of social problem at the individual level through by adopting different experimentation, scientific approaches in this study, right? So therefore, the behavioralism was a movement against traditionalism, whereas the post-behavioralism was a movement against behavioralism itself. You see the trajectory. Behavioralism was against traditionalism, but whereas post-behavioralism was against behavioralism. It's like that. So why? Because even it has its own drawbacks. The behavioralism approach has its own drawbacks. So whereas this post-behaviorism advocates, they came and thought that there is a need to correct the what is going wrong with the approaches of behaviorism itself. So but instead of condemning completely of the behavioral approach, it's supposed to be a behavioralist. They thought that there is a need to correct few things and in trying to understand the social phenomenon. So therefore, this post-behavioral also play an important role in the literature of political sociology in trying to understand the nature of political state and social institutions and social individuals during the process of social interaction, right? So therefore you have a different streams of thoughts in the political sociology discourse, right? So after studying this, so what we are now going to study is that we are trying to understand few concepts such as political system, political process, and political socialization. So these are all very important in the field of political sociology discourse, because these concepts are certainly important for us to understand and the syllabus of political sociology itself. The concepts of what is political system, what is political process, and what is political socialization. These three are very, very important. So we need to have a clear understanding of these concepts, and before we study them briefly and elaborately, right? So in this next part of our class, and we will be studying about the political system. So let us study what constitutes political system and what are its definitions and characteristics, functions and types, and we will study, right? So political system, political process, and political socialization are the major concepts of political sociology, right? And why these concepts are important? These are important to understand socio-economic and political situations, right? Social and human, political behavior can be analyzed by with the help of these concepts, right? So what is political system, and just we'll be studying them in briefly, but let us have an understanding of what is political system, what is political process, and what is political socialization. Let us have an understanding briefly of these concepts, and after having a brief understanding of this concept, we will be studying each of these concepts clearly and elaborately, right? So what is political system? So political system is to maintain the integration of society, by determining and imposing norms and will over the people. So that is political system. So it is to adopt and change elements of social, economic, and religious systems necessary for achieving collective or political goals, right? So to protect the integrity of the political system from outside threats, of course, the state plays an important role in maintaining integrity of the society. And it is the political system is a study of political actions designed to attain a purpose by the use of political power, or an activity through different political channels, specifically as participation in political organization, for example, elections and lobbying. We'll be discussing these aspects elaborately later. And the next topic we will be discussing is the political process. So the political process is the most appropriate tool to analyze the political system and and the political behavior of the state, and the political behavior of the citizens. Right? What is political process? The political process is the process of the formulation and administration of public policy, usually by interaction between the social groups and the political institutions, or between the political leadership and public opinion based on the politics of the concerned society, right? Thus, the political process is also called the political opportunity, because that impacts and infuses the ideologies and ideas in social movements, right? So, this political process argues that success or failure of social movements is primarily affected by political opportunities, right? So this is the way the political process plays an important role in the literature of political sociology. So in other words, this political process is the formulation and administration of public policy, usually by it happens through the interactions between the state, social individuals, and through the different channels of political socialization, right? And next topic you have political socialization. Next topic you have political socialization. So what is political socialization? The political socialization is a lifelong process. It is a lifelong process by which people form their ideas, learn their ideas, articulate their ideas and ideologies about politics, and they learn about the political values and so on. Right? So the political socialization is the process by which people acquire their political attitudes, right, beliefs, opinions, and behaviors, etc. For instance, so what are the agents of political socialization? The political socialization, of course, it actually begins with the family, right? Education system, friends, peer groups, media, and you have a religion, for example, and so on. So all these are the agents of political socialization, because these They play an important role in infusing political ideas, in infusing the knowledge of political system, in infusing the ideologies of political structure, among the people. Therefore, this political process and political socialization play an important role in in developing the political ideas, political behavior among the citizens, right? So there's these three concepts: the political system, political process, and the political socialization play an important role in trying to maintain the social integrity and social harmony in the society, right? So, and it plays an important role in the making of political ideologies among the mindsets of the citizens, right? And it plays an important role in determining the nature and the direction of social movement. It plays an important role in creating a platform for a dialogue with the government, with the state apparatus, with the state functions, and so on. So, thus, the political sociology discusses these aspects, that the political system, political process, and political socialization in much detailed manner. And in the next class, we will be discussing elaborately about what constitutes the nature of political system, and what determines the process of political system, and what actually encourages the political system, political socialization in trying to imbibe the political ideologies, in trying to imbibe the knowledge about political system among the mindsets of the people, that we'll be discussing in the next class. So with this, I end the class. Hope you all enjoyed the guys. Thank you so much for joining us today.